It is 3 in the morning in Jerusalem, and a trial is falling apart. The courtroom is a courtyard in the high priest's house. Oil lamps, guards at the walls, out by the fire. A fisherman is warming his hands and telling strangers he has never met the man inside. And inside, the case is collapsing because the witnesses cannot get their stories straight. And even a midnight court has rules. The prisoner has said almost nothing. Silence through the accusations. Silence through the contradictions. The judges are running out of night. So the high priest stands up and does something desperate. He puts the prisoner under oath and asks him straight, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And the man who has been silent all night opens his mouth and answers with 2 words, "Ego eimi." I am. The high priest grabs his own robe at the collar and tears it. Under the law, a judge does that for one reason only. When his ears have just heard blasphemy, the verdict comes in one breath. No more witnesses needed. By sundown, the prisoner will be dead. Now stop and look at that. Courts do not execute people for poetry. Nobody tears his robe over a metaphor. 2 words, 2 ordinary words that you and I say every day without thinking. I am hungry. I am tired. I am on my way. What was inside those 2 words that could turn a courtroom into a fire? To find out, we have to leave this courtyard and go back 1400 years to a mountain in the desert, where a bush is on fire and will not burn up. The mountain is called Horeb, and the man climbing it is a fugitive, 80 years old, a shepherd now, but he was a prince once, raised in the palace of Egypt, until the day he killed a man and ran. For 40 years he has been hiding in this wilderness, watching another man's sheep. And on this particular day he sees something wrong on the mountainside. A thorn bush, burning, common enough in that heat. Except this one keeps burning. The fire does not spread and does not die, and the branches do not turn black. Moses walks toward it, and the fire says his name. You probably know what happens next. The voice in the bush gives him a job. Go back to Egypt. Walk into the throne room you fled, and tell the most powerful king alive to release his entire slave workforce. And Moses, staring at his own sandals in the dirt, asks the question any of us would ask. When I tell them who sent me, what name do I give? The answer that comes out of the fire is the strangest sentence in the history of religion. Eye Asher, Eye, I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent you. Sit with how strange that is. Every god of Egypt had a proper name. Ra, Osiris, Isis. Names you could carve on a wall. Names you could put in your pocket. And this voice answers the name question with a sentence that refuses to finish. I am what? The sentence just stands there, open, like a signed check with the amount left blank. Israel carried that name out of Egypt and guarded it for 1400 years. And here is how seriously they took it. They stopped saying it out loud. When a reader in the synagogue reached the name in the scroll, he would swap in a substitute word rather than let it cross his lips. The scribes who copied the scrolls washed before they wrote it. 14 centuries. And that name sat in the middle of the nation like a live coal nobody would touch with a bare hand. Then a carpenter from Nazareth picked it up. He did it in broad daylight, in public, and he did it 7 times. 7 sentences, recorded by his closest friend, a fisherman named John. And each time, he took the fire from the bush and attached it to something you can hold in your hands. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. Look at that list for a second. Bread, light, a door, a shepherd, grave, road, vine. He reached for the most ordinary furniture of human existence, the things you touch today without noticing, and he hung the untouchable name on every one of them. So here is the deal you and I are going to make for the next hour, and I will hold up my end all the way to the last minute. 7 statements. We are going to walk through all 7, and each one answers a hunger you have felt, and each one hands you a piece of a portrait. Because these were never 7 separate slogans. They are 7 windows into one face. That is the promise of this road. By the end of it, you will know who this man believed himself to be. In his own words, with nothing softened. But I owe you one more thing, and this is the part to hold on to. There is an 8th statement. It is in the same book, from the same mouth, and it is on nobody's list of the 7, because the 7 all come with a gift attached. Bread, light, a door, and the 8th one gives you nothing at all. It is the shortest of them all, and it is the only one that made the crowd reach down and pick up rocks. That 8th sentence is the reason there was a trial at 3 in the morning. I am not going to tell you what it is yet, but it has been standing at the end of this road since before we started walking, and every step tonight takes us closer to it. One more thing to carry with you. A question, and do not put it down. Every time this man said, I am, something broke. Follow the record and watch it happen. He says it by a lake, and thousands of followers turn around and walk home. He says it in the temple, and men start prying stones out of the pavement. He says it in a courtroom, and a priest tears his robe and a cross gets scheduled. These are the gentlest promises ever spoken. Bread for the hungry, light for the lost, a shepherd for the scattered. So answer me this. Why did the kindest sentences this man ever said turn out to be the most dangerous? People do not kill you for being comforting. Keep that question. We are going to need it at the end. The road starts in a place nobody would choose. On the morning after a miracle, with a crowd that got exactly what it wanted and came back for more. And there is a man in our own country tonight, sitting in a parked car outside his office, who understands that crowd better than any scholar alive. He got everything he wanted today too, and he cannot make himself drive home. It is 7 in the evening in an office parking garage, and a man is sitting in his car with the engine off. Today was the day. The title he has been chasing for 15 years came through this morning. Senior Vice President. The corner office. The announcement email with his name in bold. People stopped by his desk all afternoon. There was a lunch with real tablecloths. His phone is still lighting up with congratulations, and he has stopped reading them. Because here is the thing he has not said out loud to anyone, and will not say tonight. The feeling wore off around 2 in the afternoon. 4 hours, 15 years of climbing, and the summit held him for 4 hours. And then the old ache walked back into his chest and sat down in its usual seat. And already, in the quiet of the car, he can feel his mind doing the thing it always does, scanning the horizon, looking for the next rung, the next number, the next thing that will finally be enough. He is the most successful man on his floor, and he is starving, and he does not have a word for what he is hungry for. Hold him right there in the driver's seat. Because 2,000 years ago, on the shore of a lake in Galilee, an entire crowd had the same problem, and they chased their answer around a body of water. The day before, on a hillside above that lake, Jesus had done something no one there would ever forget. 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, and somehow 5,000 men, plus women and children, ate until they were full, and the leftovers filled 12 baskets. Free bread. In a country where most families lived one bad harvest from hunger, you need to feel what that meant. This was not a magic trick to those people. This was the end of the oldest fear in their bodies. And the crowd did the math instantly. The record says they moved to take him by force and make him king. Think about that. A bread king. A ruler who could feed a nation out of thin air. Every empire in history has been built on the promise of full stomachs. And this crowd had just found a man who could deliver it forever. They were offering him the only crown anyone would ever offer him. He walked away from it, slipped through the crowd, up the mountain, alone. But a crowd like that does not give up. The next morning, they discovered he was gone, and they got into boats, and they chased him clear around the lake to the town of Capernaum. Picture the scene when they found him. Hundreds of people, out of breath, salt on their clothes, crowding into the synagogue and spilling out the doors. Yesterday's miracle looking for today's rerun. And Jesus looked at that crowd and said the quiet part out loud. You are not looking for me because you saw a sign. You are looking for me because you ate the loaves and you were filled. Then he said the sentence this whole chapter exists for. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Now, the crowd heard something in that sentence that our ears skip right past. So, slow it down. When they heard bread from heaven, they thought of one thing: manna, the miracle food that fell out of the sky every morning for 40 years while their ancestors wandered the desert. It was the greatest feeding program in their history, and they brought it up to him on the spot. As a challenge, Moses gave our fathers bread from heaven. What will you give? And his answer took the manna story and turned it over like an hourglass. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness, he said, and they died. That is the line to underline. Manna was a gift, and gifts run out. Manna fed you for a day, and the hunger came back with the sunrise. And you went out with your basket again. It kept a generation alive, and it kept not one of them alive forever. Manna was never the destination. Manna was an arrow, pointing at something else, and the something else was now standing in a synagogue in Capernaum saying, I am not the delivery man. I am the meal. Because listen to the grammar. It is doing the heavy lifting. He did not say, I will give you bread. He had already done that. Yesterday, on the hillside. And look what it produced. A crowd that woke up hungry again and launched boats. Handouts create lines. He said something in a different category altogether. I am the bread. The gift and the giver are the same thing. What he offers the hunger is himself. And that lands on us harder than it landed on them. Because you and I live in the most successful manna economy ever constructed. We are the best fed people in human history. And I am not only talking about food. Achievement falls on us like manna. Entertainment falls like manna. The phone refills every time we pull the screen. The packages land on the porch in 2 days. The feed never runs out. We gather every morning with our baskets. And somehow, the man in the parking garage is sitting in the middle of all that abundance with an ache he cannot name. Doing the arithmetic every honest person eventually does at the top of some ladder. If getting what I wanted did not fix this, what will? He is not broken. His hunger is not a malfunction. It is a compass. The ache that outlasts every promotion is pointing at a table. And the table is not in that building. Now, back in Capernaum. Watch what the sentence does to the crowd, because this is the part almost nobody preaches, and it changes everything about how you hear these 7 statements. The crowd wanted a bread king. He offered them himself instead, and he would not back down, and he let the words get harder the longer they argued. And the record, John chapter 6, verse 66, tells you the price in one of the saddest sentences in the Bible. From that time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. Read it again. The first I am statement in the book is the one that emptied the room. Thousands chased him around a lake at breakfast. And by supper he was standing with 12 men, asking them if they wanted to leave too. This man watched the biggest audience of his career walk over the hill, and he did not soften one syllable to hold them. There is your first piece of evidence for the question you are carrying. These sentences were never designed to grow a following. Every instinct of a crowd pleaser runs the other direction. You feed the people what they came for. You ride the wave. You take the crown when they offer it. He did the opposite at every turn, which tells you he was not performing. A man only talks like that when he is saying something he believes is true, whether anyone stays to hear it or not. So here is the first demand of the road. And every one of these 7 will cost you something real. Name the actual hunger. Stop pouring one more substitute meal into a hole that was never shaped like a promotion, or a purchase, or a person's approval. The man in the parking garage has spent 15 years feeding the ache everything except the one thing it wants. And the proof is sitting in the driver's seat with the engine off. Tonight, the demand looks like one honest sentence, said quietly, with nobody listening. All of it was manna. I am still hungry. And here is the first promise. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. The Greek underneath is stronger than the English lets on. It is a double negative. The strongest. No, the language could build. Will not. Not ever. By no means hunger. Every other meal you have ever eaten had a half-life. 4 hours for a promotion. A weekend for a purchase. This is the only table in existence where the word never is on the menu. One small detail before we leave this chapter. I am going to set it on the table and keep moving. And you just hold it. 3 years after that day in Capernaum, on the last night of his life, this same man sat at a supper with his friends, and the record says he took bread and gave thanks and broke it and handed it to them with a sentence. This is my body, given for you. He did not say, this bread stands for my teaching. He said, my body. Set it down. Keep walking. The bread of life was never a figure of speech looking for a compliment. It was a forwarding address for every hunger you have ever had. But hunger is only the first door, because a person can be fed, truly fed, and still be lost. There is a kind of trouble that food cannot touch. The trouble of not being able to see the road. And there is a woman in this country, 2 in the morning, lying in the brightest bedroom in human history, and she cannot see 3 feet in front of her life. It is 2 in the morning in a bedroom in America, and a woman's face is glowing blue. She told herself lights out at 11. That was 3 hours ago. The phone is 6 inches from her eyes, and her thumb is doing the thing it does. Pull, refresh, scroll, pull again, and she is not even enjoying it anymore. She is just doing it. Somewhere around 1, she watched a video about a stranger's kitchen renovation. And now she is reading an argument between 2 people she will never meet. And outside her window, the streetlights are burning over empty roads. The way they burn all night. Every night. In every city we have built. Here is the strange fact about this woman. And about all of us. She is lying in the most illuminated moment in the history of the human race. Her ancestors lit a candle and guarded it. She has a lamp in her pocket. A lamp on her ceiling. A lamp in her hand that never runs out of oil. We have flooded the planet with so much light that scientists gave the overflow a name. Light pollution. We burn so many lamps that most Americans can no longer see the stars. Think about that trade. The poorest shepherd who ever lived went to sleep under the whole Milky Way. Every night of his life. Free of charge. We handed that sky away for a glowing screen. And now we drive 2 hours into the desert and pay for a camping permit to glimpse what he had for nothing. More light than any people who ever lived. And this woman cannot see where her life is going. She is not short on lumens. She is short on direction. There is a difference between a lit room and a lit road. And at 2 in the morning, in the blue glow, she knows exactly which one she has. Hold her there. Thumb moving. Eyes tired. Because the sentence for her was spoken at a festival of light. In a city that was celebrating the one time in history, a light actually knew the way. It is October in Jerusalem, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the city is packed. This was the biggest party on Israel's calendar. A week of pilgrims sleeping in shelters made of branches, remembering the 40 years their ancestors camped in the wilderness. And at the center of the memory stood one image that every child in that crowd could describe. The pillar of fire. Because when their ancestors walked out of Egypt into a trackless desert, God went ahead of them. A column of cloud by day and a column of fire by night. No man lit it. No man carried it. It moved. And the nation moved. It stopped, and the nation stopped. It was the only light in human memory that did not just show you the ground under your feet. It knew the destination. 1 million people followed a fire they did not build, through a wilderness with no roads, for 40 years, and it never once led them wrong. That is what this festival was about. And the rabbi's own records describe how the temple courts blazed during those nights, with towering lamps in the court of the women, lamps so tall that ladders were needed to fill their bowls with oil, and their light spilled over the walls until, the old accounts say, there was hardly a courtyard in Jerusalem that did not glow with it. A city on fire with memory. A whole nation looking backward at the days when God himself was their flashlight. And it is right there, in the temple, in the middle of that festival, that John's record places this sentence, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Hear it the way the crowd heard it. They were celebrating a pillar of fire that led one nation through one desert for one generation. And a carpenter from the north country stands up in the temple courts and says, "That fire you are all remembering. I am what it was pointing at." And then he blows the borders off it. Light of the world, not the light of Israel, not the light of the righteous, or the educated, or the chosen. The world. He is standing in the one building on earth, built on the idea of a chosen people, and he claims a jurisdiction with no fence around it. That alone would have started arguments. But there is a second edge on this sentence, and it is the edge we like least. So most of us file it off. Light does two things, and we only ever ask it for one. Light guides. That is the part we want. Show me the road. Show me the next step. Get me out of this dark patch. But turn on the lights in a room that has been dark for years and watch what happens first. Before light guides you anywhere, it shows you where you actually are. The dust, the mess shoved under the furniture, the things you could ignore in the dark because in the dark they had no shape. People say they want light, but most of us are really shopping for a flashlight we can point away from ourselves. Jesus did not offer that model, and the proof is stitched right into the same chapter. Because John chapter 8 opens with a scene that shows you both uses of light back to back. A woman is dragged into the temple courts at dawn, caught in adultery. The men who caught her standing around her with the law in their mouths and stones in their reach. Understand what they are doing. They are using light as a weapon, exposure as execution. Here is her sin, out in the open, in front of everyone. Now let us burn her with it. And Jesus bends down, writes something in the dust, and straightens up with one sentence. Let the one among you who has never sinned throw the first stone. Same light, different direction. He turns the beam around, and one by one, oldest first, the men look at what it shows them and walk away. And when the courtyard is empty, he stands in front of the woman, the one person there whose guilt was never in question, and gives her the other half of light. Neither do I condemn you. Go, and leave the sin behind. There it is, the full anatomy of this beatitude of brightness. Light that exposes the proud and refuses to incinerate the guilty. Light that shows you the truth about yourself, and then, instead of handing you a verdict, hands you a road. So here is what the second statement reveals that the first one did not. The bread told you he is the source. What your emptiness has been looking for. The light tells you he has the authority to show things as they actually are. Your world and your own heart. And the intent to heal what he exposes. A doctor's light, not a prosecutor's. And here is the second demand of the road. Come out of the twilight. Twilight is that middle brightness most of us actually live in. Enough light to function. Enough shadow to hide. The curated life where the beam only ever points at our good side. The demand is to let the light into the one room you keep locked. The account, the habit, the history, the two in the morning scroll. The thing that has no shape only because you keep the switch off. The woman in the blue glow does not need one more lit screen. She needs to hand the flashlight to someone who loves her and let it sweep the corners. And the promise, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Look at that verb. Have. Their ancestors watched the pillar of fire from their tent doors. It was out there, ahead of the camp. This promise moves the fire inside. You do not visit this light or chase this light. You carry it. The way the wilderness generation carried a glow on their faces out of a desert with no roads. One small detail before this chapter closes. You know what we do with these now. I will set it down without comment. And we keep going. The day this man died, the record keepers noted the weather from noon until 3 in the afternoon. The very hours when the sun stands highest and strongest. Darkness came down over the whole land. 3 hours of night. In the middle of the day, while the light of the world was going out on a hill. Set it down. Keep walking. Light can do a lot for a traveler. It can show him the road, and it can show him himself. But light by itself has never solved the traveler's last problem, because at the end of every road there is a threshold, and the question stops being, can I see? And becomes, will I be let in? There is a man in this country facing that exact question tonight, staring at more open doors than any generation has ever been offered, and he cannot make himself walk through a single one of them. It is Sunday night in an apartment in America, and a 34-year-old man is sitting in front of a laptop with 11 tabs open. Count what is on that screen. 3 job offers in 3 different cities. All of them fine. None of them obvious. 2 dating apps, each holding conversations he has let go quiet. A list somebody published called the 10 best cities for people like him. A browser full of open doors. His grandfather got one job at 22 and worked it for 40 years. Married the girl from 2 streets over. Died in the town he was born in. 1 door. And he walked through it and built a life on the other side. This man has 100 doors. And he is 34. And he is still standing in the hallway. Everyone told him options were freedom. Nobody told him the math. Walking through 1 door means letting 10 others swing shut. So he hovers, keeping them all open, committing to none. And the hallway has slowly become his address. But look closer, because the tabs are not the real problem. The real problem is what every one of those doors has printed on it. In fine print, he has learned to read. Prove it. The job will keep him while his numbers are good. The apps will surface him while his profile performs. Every door he has ever walked through came with a lease he had to keep renewing. Hit the target. Hold the attention. Stay useful. And the day he cannot, the door is a wall again. What this man is starving for has never once appeared on any of his screens. A door that says, you can stop auditioning now. A room he cannot be voted out of. Somewhere he belongs that does not run a review every quarter. Hold him in the hallway, because the sentence for him was spoken to people who knew exactly what a door was for. And it was not decoration. Jesus is in the middle of a story about sheep. And to hear it right, you have to see a real sheepfold. The kind that dotted the hills of Judea. Out in open country, a sheepfold was a rough circle of stacked stone, chest high, piled by hand, sometimes topped with thorns to discourage the wolves. And in that wall there was exactly 1 gap, 1 opening, no hinges, no gate, no lock. Because out on those hills there was nothing to build a gate from. So at night, after the flock was counted in, the shepherd did the thing that turns this whole chapter from a greeting card into something that puts a lump in your throat. He lay down in the gap, his own body stretched across the opening, his back against one side of the stones. That was the door. There was no other. Any wolf that wanted a lamb had to cross the shepherd first. Teeth against a man with a club who had been fighting off predators since boyhood. Any sheep drifting toward the wild had to step over its shepherd to get there. Nothing came in, and nothing wandered out, without touching him. In the morning he stood up, and the door was open. At night he lay down, and the door was locked. The man was the threshold. Now listen to the sentence again, the way the shepherds in that crowd heard it. I am the door. Whoever enters through me will be saved, and will come in and go out, and find pasture. The people in that audience did not hear architecture. They heard a man saying, I will put my body between you and everything out there. Which means this statement was never really about access control. It is about what the access costs, and who pays it. Every door in that man's laptop charges the person entering. This door charges the door. And look at the three verbs stacked inside the promise. Because each one answers a different fear. Come in, that is safety. The wall and the shepherd between you and the night. Go out, and do not skip that one, because it changes the picture completely. This fold is not a cage. The sheep go out every single morning, into open country, into the wide day. Whatever this belonging is, it is not confinement dressed up in religious language, and find pasture. That is provision. The door does not just protect you. It opens onto the thing that feeds you. Safety, freedom, and food through one opening. Which brings us to the part of this sentence that our century trips over hardest. So let us take it head on instead of walking around it. One door. The claim is exclusive. And there is no honest way to sand that down. He did not say, I am one of several fine entrances, and I know how that lands on modern ears. In a world of 11 tabs, where keeping your options open is practically a moral value. It can sound narrow, even arrogant. But before you rule on it, notice who the claim is narrow about, and who it is wide open to. The door is one. The invitation on it reads, whoever enters, not the qualified, not the credentialed, the cleaned up, the ones with strong numbers this quarter. The word on this door is the widest word in the language. And it is the one word none of the doors in that apartment hallway have ever offered that man. Every door he knows is wide about entrances and narrow about who gets to stay. This one is narrow about the entrance and scandalously wide about who may come through it. One gap in the wall. Any sheep that wants in. So here is what the third statement reveals. The bread said he is the source. The light said he shows things as they are. The door says he is the access. And more than that, he is access that pays its own toll. Belonging that costs the shepherd instead of billing the sheep. The fourth demand of the road. Then, and for the man in the hallway, it might be the hardest one yet. Stop auditioning. Pick the door that is not grading you and walk through it. Which means giving up the strange comfort of the hallway, where you never lose a door because you never choose one. Standing among options feels like freedom right up until you notice the decades going by. 100 open doors and no threshold crossed is just a very well-lit way of being homeless. And the promise, saved, in and out, and pasture, a place where your right to remain was settled by someone else's body in the gap, before you ever showed up with a resume. One small detail. By now you know the rhythm. I set it down, and we walk on. In the temple, in Jerusalem, hung a veil, a woven wall, 4 inches thick by the old descriptions, sealing off the innermost room. the most holy place, where the presence of God was said to dwell. One man, the high priest, passed through it one day a year, and no one else, ever. It was the most guarded threshold on earth. And the record says that on the afternoon this man died outside the city wall. At the moment he breathed his last, that veil tore open, top to bottom. The accounts specify, not bottom to top, the direction human hands would tear it, from the top, as if someone on the far side had taken hold of the most locked door in the world and opened it from within. Set it down. Keep walking. A door will hold you safe all night, but a door has one limit built into its very nature. It cannot move. Morning comes. The flock pours out through the gap into open country, out where the grass is, and out where the wolves are, and the stone wall cannot follow them there. Out on the hills, the sheep need something more than a threshold. They need the man himself, on his feet, walking with them. And the question every flock and every one of us eventually asks about that man is not whether he is kind, or wise, or good with a staff. The question is older and colder than that. When the wolf comes over the ridge, and the job turns dangerous, does he stay? There is a 26-year-old woman in this country who is being shepherded right now, tonight, and she has no idea. Her shepherd never sleeps. It knows what time she wakes up, because that is when her thumb makes its first pull. It knows she gets sad on Sunday evenings. It can see it in what she lingers on. It knew her relationship was ending 2 weeks before she changed anything public. Because heartbreak has a scroll pattern, and it reads scroll patterns the way an old herdsman reads clouds. It knows her fears, her cravings, the exact flavor of video that will hold her one more minute at 1 in the morning. And it feeds her. That is the word for what it does. Every hour, every pull of the screen, it leads her to pasture it has chosen. Pasture, measured and tested and optimized for one thing, keeping her grazing. By every technical measure, she has the most attentive shepherd any human being has ever had. Knows the flock perfectly, present around the clock, never tired, never distracted, never off duty. And one night this spring, she found out what kind of shepherd it is. She was on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, with the worst phone call of her life still ringing in her ears. The kind of night that divides a life into before and after. And her shepherd was right there with her, faithful as ever. Working. It suggested a video. It had noticed her engagement was up. That is the moment to freeze. The girl on the tile and the glowing screen still doing its job. Because 2,000 years ago, Jesus drew a line straight down the middle of everyone who has ever kept a flock. And that line runs through her bathroom. We are still in John chapter 10. Same sermon as the door. But now the sun has come up on the picture. The flock is out of the fold, scattered across open hill country. And shepherding stops being a wall and becomes a job. And you need to know what that job was. Because our paintings have lied to us about it. We picture a gentle soul in soft light, holding a lamb. The real work was closer to soldiering. Judean hill country had wolves, jackals, bears in the early days, and lions in living memory. A shepherd carried a club studded with stones and knew how to use it in the dark. A boy named David once itemized the job for a king. When a lion came and took a lamb, I went after it, struck it down, and took the lamb from its mouth. That was the trade. Long odds, bad weather, and teeth. And Jesus splits that trade in two with a single test. Not skill, not knowledge of the hills, not tenderness with the lambs. The test is one question, and everything hangs on it. What does the man do when the wolf shows up? The hired hand, he says, sees the wolf coming and runs. Because the sheep are not his. He is in it for wages. And the arithmetic of a hired man is simple and airtight. No paycheck is worth dying over. Hear this clearly. The hired hand is not a villain. He might be pleasant, competent, genuinely fond of the flock on sunny days. His flaw only shows in one specific weather. He is with the sheep for what the sheep produce. And the moment the cost of staying rises above the value of the wage, his legs make the decision for him. Every sheep in his care is, at bottom, revenu. Now the woman on the bathroom floor understands her shepherd. It never loved her. It billed her. Her attention was the wool, and it sheared her daily, gently, expertly. And the night the wolf came for her, it kept right on shearing. Because that was the whole job all along. A hired hand does not even have to run away to abandon you. It can abandon you while sitting in your hand, glowing. Against all of that, one sentence. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The word John records for good is worth 30 seconds of your life. Greek had a plain word for morally good. Agathos. Dutiful. Upright. Correct. That is not the word here. The word is kalos. And kalos means good, the way a craftsman means it. Good, like a blade that holds its edge. Good, like a roof that holds in a storm. Beautiful at the job. True to what the thing is supposed to be. When Jesus says the kalos shepherd, he is saying the real one. The one all the others are copies of, and the definition of the real one is a single behavior. And he repeats it 5 times in this one short passage, as if hammering it into the doorframe. Lays down his life for the sheep. Lays down his life. 5 times. The Greek verb is tithemai, and it is not a verb of accident or risk. It is the verb for setting something down on purpose. The way you set a tool on a bench. Then he makes it explicit. In case anyone thought he meant dying as bad luck. No one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. There is the line between the two shepherds, drawn in one stroke. The hired hand values the flock by what it yields him. The good shepherd values the flock above his own blood. One shears, one bleeds, and you can never tell them apart on a sunny day. Only the wolf reveals the difference. But the crowd listening that day heard something even bigger underneath. And this is the part that turns the chapter from comforting to seismic. Because shepherd was not a neutral word in Israel. It was a loaded political word with 600 years of freight on it. And the freight came from a prophet named Ezekiel, 6 centuries earlier, with the nation collapsing. God had spoken through Ezekiel against what he called the shepherds of Israel, meaning the kings, the priests, the officials, everyone paid to guard the flock. And the indictment reads like a prosecutor's closing. Woe to the shepherds who only feed themselves. You eat the fat. You clothe yourselves with the wool. You slaughter the choice animals. But you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. The whole ruling class of a nation. convicted of being hired hands. And then, in the middle of the indictment, God says the thing that hung in Israel's air for 600 years. I myself will search for my sheep. I myself will tend them. I will look for the lost, bring back the strays, bind up the injured, strengthen the weak. Read that promise slowly. God did not say, I will send a better class of shepherd. He said, I am taking the job. Personally, 600 years. And every scholar in every synagogue knew that clause was still open. So when a carpenter stands on those same hills and says, I am the good shepherd, I know my sheep, I lay down my life for them, the educated men in that crowd are not hearing a nice pastoral image. They are hearing a man step into a vacancy that the book of Ezekiel says God reserved for himself. And their reaction is right there in the text. And it is not applause. Many of them said, he has a demon and is out of his mind. And before John chapter 10 is over, for the second time in this gospel, they pick up stones. Keep feeding the question you have carried since chapter 1, the gentlest job description in Scripture. And it nearly got him executed on the spot. Kind words do not draw rocks. Claims do. So here is what the fourth statement reveals. The bread said, he is the source. The light said, he shows things as they are. The door said, he is the access. The shepherd tells you what all of it costs, and who has agreed to pay. His identity is not just power. It is self-spending. He is the owner who does the dying. The demand of this chapter is a diagnostic, and it is one question, and you should run it on everything and everyone that currently leads you. Your feeds, your voices, your influences, the people and platforms you follow, in the oldest sense of that word. Ask it plainly, what does this shepherd gain from me? And what would this shepherd lose for me? Run those two columns honestly, and most of the shepherds in your life turn out to be payroll. That is not cynicism. That is Ezekiel's audit. And you are allowed to perform it. And the promise, I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. The verb is ginosko, and it is relationship knowledge, not file knowledge. The algorithm knows everything about the woman on the bathroom floor. Every data point, every pattern, and it has never once known her. He is claiming the other kind, the shepherd who calls his own sheep by name. The voice the sheep can pick out of a crowd of strangers in the dark. One small detail. Set it down with the others. And do not look at it too long yet. 3 years after this sermon, on a spring night, this man stood in an olive grove while soldiers with torches and clubs came through the trees to arrest him. His flock, 11 frightened men, stood behind him. And the record preserves the strangest sentence any prisoner ever spoke at his own arrest. He stepped toward the torches and said, if it is me you are looking for, let these men go. The wolf came. The shepherd walked out to meet it. And the record adds, not one of them was lost. Set it down. Keep walking. Every flock in history has trusted its shepherd with the ordinary dangers. The ledge, the storm, the wolf. But there is one predator no shepherd has ever stopped. It gets into every fold sooner or later, past every wall, past every guard, and it never gives the lamb back. It has 100 names and one face. And there is a house in the village of Bethany where it has just walked in the front door. 2 sisters live there. Their brother is dying, and their friend, the one man in the world with the power to do something about it, has just received their message. and he has decided to arrive late. There is a woman in this country living in what I can only call day 4. Nobody uses that phrase around her, but she would recognize it instantly, because day 4 has a very specific climate. Day 4 is not the day the terrible thing happens. That is day 1. And day 1 is all adrenaline and casseroles and people saying, "We will get through this." Day 4 is later. Day 4 is when the doctors switch from "we will fight this" to "we want to keep her comfortable." It is when the counselor stops assigning homework to the marriage. It is when the son finishes his 3rd program and relapses a 3rd time. And the family group chat quietly stops sharing articles about recovery. Day 4 is the day hope stops being encouraged and starts being managed. The people who love you begin, gently, tactfully, to help you accept. And she has learned the strange skill everyone in day 4 learns. She has started arranging her life around the grave, the way a family arranges chairs around a hole in the floor. You do not fill it. You cannot. You just learn the walking routes that keep you from falling in. And you call that coping. And everyone agrees you are doing so well. She also carries a sentence. Everyone in day 4 carries it. It has 2 words of accusation dressed in perfect politeness. And it is aimed at heaven. If you had been here, if you had been here, when the scans were still clean, if you had been here, when the marriage could still be saved, when the boy was still asking for help, when it was still early enough to matter, where were you when this was fixable? Hold that woman, and hold her sentence, because she did not invent it. It was first spoken on a dirt road outside a village called Bethany, 2 miles from Jerusalem, by a woman named Martha, and the man she said it to did not flinch. He had arranged to receive it. Here is the story, and I am going to walk it slowly, because the timing is the whole point. Jesus is a day's walk away, across the Jordan. When a runner finds him with a message from 2 sisters, he loves, "Lord, the one you love is sick." That is the whole message. Mary and Martha of Bethany, and their brother Lazarus. This was the closest thing the man had to a family home. The house where he was not the rabbi, just the friend. And the sister's note is a masterpiece of restraint. They do not even ask him to come. They know they do not have to. You just tell your friend with healing in his hands that his friend is dying, and you count the hours. And then John writes the strangest paragraph in his gospel, and he writes it on purpose. And you can feel him choosing every word. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Read the hinge of that sentence again. He loved them, so he stayed. Not, he loved them, but he was delayed. Every instinct in your body wants that sentence to say, "but." It says so. The delay was not the failure of his love. It was the strategy of it. He stood still, on the far side of the Jordan, with the clock running on his friend's life, on purpose. Why? Hold the question. The chapter will pay it. By the time he walks into Bethany, Lazarus has been in the tomb 4 days, and the number 4 is not a detail. It is a wall. There was a folk belief in that time and place. You can find it in the old rabbinic writings, that the soul of the dead lingered near the body for 3 days, hoping to return. Day 3 was the last flicker. Day 4 was the door closing. Whatever medical hope, mystical hope, any hope a grieving family could grasp at. Day 4 was its expiration date. When Jesus finally walks up that road, he has not merely missed the illness. He has missed the funeral, missed the burial, and missed the last superstition a desperate family could lean on. He arrives after hope's paperwork is complete. He arrives. In other words, in day 4, on schedule, Martha hears he is coming and does not wait for him to reach the house. She goes out the road to meet him, and she leads with the sentence, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." There it is, the day 4 sentence, the polite accusation. And notice he takes it without one word of self-defense. Then she adds something brave and half-hopeful. "Even now, I know God will give you whatever you ask." And he answers, "Your brother will rise again." Now watch Martha do the thing that religious people have done at gravesides ever since. She agrees with him. Theologically, at maximum distance. I know he will rise again, in the resurrection, at the last day, and she is correct. That was solid doctrine. The resurrection at the end of time, and she believes it. And look closely at what that belief is doing for her on this road. It is true, and it is far away. The resurrection she believes in is an event on God's calendar, at the end of the age, safely beyond the reach of her actual Tuesday. It asks nothing of her present tense. Comfort at the horizon, grief in the house. Plenty of us hold our faith at exactly that distance, close enough to recite, far enough that it never touches the wound. And Jesus takes her far-away doctrine and collapses the distance to zero. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Do not rush past what just happened on that road. Martha said, "Resurrection is an event at the end of time." He said, "The resurrection is standing in front of you. It is not a date. It is a person, not something God will eventually do, but someone God is. And that someone has feet, and the feet are dusty from the road. And they just walked into day 4, uninvited. Every other comforter at that funeral is pointing her forward. Someday, at the last day, eventually, he points at himself, and the tense of the verb is present. I am. Now, before we walk to the tomb, I have to build a guardrail, and I am going to build it with care. Because this sentence gets draped over hospital beds and caskets by well-meaning people. And sometimes it is handled in ways that add cruelty to grief. This statement is not a promise that every Lazarus you love will come out of the tomb this week. It is not a verdict on your prayers, as if the sick room stayed silent because you believed too little. And it is not a command to stop grieving, to get over it, to smile at the funeral because doctrine requires it. And the proof is not my opinion. The proof is standing in the story, about 100 yards further up this same road. Because they take him to the tomb, and the record gives us 2 words. The shortest verse in the English Bible. Jesus wept. Stop there. This man knows, right now, at this exact moment, what he is about to do. The miracle is minutes away, already decided, already in his hands, and standing in front of the stone, knowing the ending, knowing the tears at this funeral have less than 10 minutes left to live. He cries, real tears, public tears, tears the bystanders could see well enough to comment on. Look how he loved him. Whatever theology you carry into a funeral, It has to make room for that verse. The man with authority over death did not stand above the grief. He stood in it, and it wet his face, which means tears are not a failure of faith. The truest faith that ever walked the earth wept at a grave it was about to empty. If anyone ever shames your day for tears, send them to Bethany. Then he says, take away the stone. And Martha, practical Martha, who runs the house and does the math, says the most honest sentence in the whole chapter. Lord, by this time there is an odor. He has been dead 4 days. She has believed his doctrine and confessed his identity. And she still does not want that stone moved. And be gentle with her, because you and I are exactly the same. We will worship at a sealed grave all day long. It is the opening we cannot bear. There are things we have buried. Marriages, dreams, versions of ourselves, and we have made peace with the sealed stone. And the last thing we want is for someone to reopen what we have finally learned to walk around. Hope, at that stage, feels less like a gift and more like a threat. He moves the stone anyway, and he prays, briefly, out loud, and then, the record says, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And day 4 ended. The dead man walked out of his own tomb with the grave cloths still wound around him. And Jesus, in the most practical sentence ever spoken beside a miracle, told the stunned bystanders, unwrap him and let him go. So here is what the 5th statement reveals. And it is the summit of the 7 so far. The bread said he is the source. The light said he shows things as they are. The door said he is the access. The shepherd said he pays with his own blood. The resurrection says his identity holds power over the one enemy. No shepherd, no doctor, no umpire, and no amount of love has ever beaten. He did not claim to know the way out of death, the way a guide knows a trail. He claimed to be the way out, in his own person. Life is not a thing he distributes. It is a thing he is. The demand of this chapter is the hardest one on the road so far. And it is Martha's demand. Take him to the grave you have sealed, the one you have arranged your walking routes around. Come and see, they said to him, and that is the invitation to echo. Name the buried thing in his hearing and consent to the stone moving, which means consenting to hope again, with the odor and everything, in a place where hope has already hurt you once. And the promise, whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. Notice, the promise does not go around death. It goes through it. Though he die, this is not a spell against funerals. It is a claim about what funerals can no longer finish. One small detail, before we leave Bethany. Set it down beside the others. The old preachers noticed something in the way he raised his friend. He did not simply shout, come out. He said the name first, Lazarus, come out. And they used to say, with half a smile, that the name was necessary, because if that voice had shouted only come out at the mouth of the tomb, with nothing to narrow it, every grave in the cemetery would have had to answer, set it down, keep walking. But understand what Bethany set in motion, because this miracle did not end the story. It scheduled the ending. Word of a man raising the 4 days dead ran the 2 miles into Jerusalem by nightfall. And John records the emergency council that followed, and their conclusion. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. From that day on, the record says, they plotted to take his life. The clock that had been ticking since the lakeside in Capernaum began to run fast. He knows it. And so, on his last night alive, he gathers his men in a borrowed upstairs room. And over supper, he starts saying goodbye. And the room begins to come apart. One of you will betray me. Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. Little children, I am with you only a little longer, and where I am going, you cannot come. 11 men who bet everything on him, listening to the ground crack under their feet. And one of them, the blunt one, the one who always says what the others are thinking, finally breaks. Lord, we do not even know where you are going. How can we know the way? Thomas asked for directions. What he got instead was the 6th I am. There is a 24-year-old in an apartment kitchen tonight, and he has 10 maps spread out on the table, and every one of them is hand-drawn. Not literal maps, decision maps. He has spent the evening the way his generation has been taught to decide, with a legal pad and a browser. 2 cities he could move to, a career he could bet on or abandon, a girlfriend the relationship apps would call promising and his grandmother would call the one, and he honestly cannot tell which voice to trust. And under all of it, the bigger question, the one he only lets himself look at sideways. What is actually true? What do I actually build a life on? He grew up on a phrase, and it sounded like freedom the whole time he was growing. Live your truth. Everyone gets a compass. Everyone draws their own map. No one is allowed to tell anyone else the route. And tonight, at the kitchen table, he has finally hit the flaw in the whole system. And it is not a philosophy problem. It is an engineering problem. Every map on this table was drawn by someone who has never been where the map claims to go. His truth was drawn by a cartographer with no travel history. Himself, 24 years old, mapping territory he has never seen, and then trusting his own drawing with his one life. He does not need an 11th map. What he is starving for, sitting under that kitchen light, is a different thing entirely. A person who has actually been there. Someone who has walked the whole road, all the way to the end, and come back, and can say, take my hand. I know this country. Hold him at that table. Because the sentence he needs was spoken in another room. At night, at another table, to a man who was coming apart for the exact same reason. It is the last night. The borrowed upstairs room in Jerusalem. Supper is over, and the room has gone wrong in a way none of the 11 can name. The bread has been broken with that strange sentence attached. This is my body. Judas has slipped out into the dark, and only one person at the table knows why. And Jesus has begun to talk like a man leaving. One of you will betray me. Peter, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Little children, I am with you only a little while longer. Where I am going, you cannot come. Feel the floor of that room. These are 11 men who burned every boat they had. They walked off fishing businesses, out of tax booths, away from family expectations. 3 years ago, to follow one man. He was the plan. There was no other plan. No fallback. No version of their future without him in the middle of it. And he is telling them, tonight, that he is leaving, and they cannot come. He can see what it is doing to them. And the next sentence proves it. Let not your hearts be troubled. You do not say that to calm men. And then he offers them the strangest comfort. In my Father's house are many rooms. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And you know the way to where I am going. And Thomas breaks. Thank God for Thomas. Every group has one. The man with no talent for pretending. The one who asks the question the whole room is choking on. History nicknamed him the Doubter. And the nickname is unfair. Because what Thomas actually was honest at the worst possible moments. And what comes out of him now is barely a theology question at all. Listen to the panic in it. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Strip the sentence down, and it is the cry of the kitchen table. We do not have the map. You are leaving, and we do not have the map. Give us directions, landmarks, a route we can hold on to when you are gone. Thomas is asking for information, and Jesus answers with a person. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Do you see what just happened in that room? Thomas asked, What is the way? Jesus answered, I am. It looks like he dodged the question. He answered a bigger one. Because a map is exactly what you need when your guide is leaving. But a guide who will never leave you makes the map unnecessary. You do not ask for directions when the man who knows the country has your hand and is walking with you. Thomas asked for the route. Jesus gave him the escort. Now slow down on the 3 words. Because each one takes something this world sells in pieces and gathers it into a person. The way. Greek gives it a definite article. Iodus. The way, and the article is the whole scandal. Every rabbi in Israel would tell you, he taught a way. Here is a man saying he is one, and his first followers took him at his word with a straight face. Because the book of Acts records the earliest nickname for Christians. Before the word Christian existed, outsiders in those first years just called them the people of the way. An entire movement, named after a road, because the road was a man. The truth. In John's Gospel, truth was never a stack of correct facts. Truth is the reliable unveiling of what God is actually like, which means the claim here is staggering when you stand under it. Want to know what God is like? He is saying, look at me. Watch me wash feet. Watch me weep at a grave. Watch me take the blame off a woman in the temple courts and put the stones down. Truth is not a doctrine you memorize. In this room, truth has a face. And the face is looking at 11 terrified men with kindness, the life, and John chooses his word here too, because Greek had a word for biological life. Bios, the heartbeat, the breath, the thing a monitor measures. That is not the word. The word is su, life in its full voltage, the kind of aliveness that flows from being connected to the source of it. Bios is what you have until the funeral. Zoe is what Lazarus was handed at the door of a tomb. Way, truth, life, the root, the reality, the voltage, all 3. One person. And now the second half of the sentence. And we are going to stand right in front of it, because this is the most argued over sentence in the modern world. And I promised you at the start of this road that nothing would be softened. No one comes to the Father except through me. That is exclusive. There is no honest reading that makes it anything else. And I am not going to insult you by sanding it round. One way, not one of several. Whole books have been written against this sentence, and it gets quoted in anger from both directions. swung like a hammer by some people who believe it, and dismissed as arrogance by many who do not. But before you file your verdict, do the thing this whole journey has trained you to do. Look at the room it was spoken in. This sentence was not delivered from a stage, at a debate, against the followers of other religions. There is no crowd here. It is close to midnight, in a small, upstairs room, and the audience is 11 men who are watching their whole future die at the table. And the tone of voice, the record tells you plainly, is comfort. Let not your hearts be troubled. That is the sentence it lives next to. This is not a taunt hurled at outsiders. It is a father in a doorway, with frightened kids in the bed, saying, "You do not need to know the route. You know me, and I am coming back for you." Anyone who quotes this verse with a sneer has kept the words and lost the room. The claim is as narrow as one man. The comfort was aimed at people falling apart. And notice something nobody notices. For Thomas, the exclusivity was the comfort. An anxious man does not want 7 possible routes. He is drowning in routes. That is the kitchen table again. What lifts the weight off a panicking heart is one voice saying, "Stop navigating. I have this. Through me, you are not going to find your way to the Father. Like a hiker with a compass, you are going to be brought." So here is what the 6th statement reveals. The bread said, "He is the source." The light said, "He shows things as they are." The door said, "He is the access." The shepherd said, "He pays for it." The resurrection said, "Death does not outrank him." The way says this: getting to God was never going to be your act of navigation. It is his act of escort. Religion, all of it, every system humans ever built, is mankind drawing maps toward God. This man says the traffic runs the other direction. God has drawn a road toward you, and the road is alive, and it knows your name. The demand of this chapter, then, fire your cartographer. Change the question you ask at every fork. From which road? To whose hand? The young man at the kitchen table can spend 10 more years perfecting maps of countries he has never seen. Or he can do the thing that terrifies every modern person. Trust a guide instead of a document. Following a person costs more than following a map. A map never asks you to die to your own sense of direction. That is exactly why maps are so popular. And the promise. And it is hiding 2 sentences earlier. Back in the comfort, "I go to prepare a place for you, and I will come again, and will take you to myself." Read the end of that promise closely. The destination of the way is not a location. Where I am, there you may be also. The way does not end at a place. It ends at a person. You are not walking toward an address. You are walking toward a welcome. One small detail. Set it down with the others. And this one you can check on any map of Jerusalem. The way is not an abstraction. It has coordinates. From that upstairs room, the road runs down the western hill, across the Kidron Valley in the dark, into an olive grove called Gethsemane. From the grove, it runs bound and under guard to a courtyard we have stood in before. At 3 in the morning, where a robe gets torn, from the courtyard, to a Roman pavement, to a whipping post, and then out through the city gate to a low hill beside the road. The kind of place travelers would pass and read the charges. The man who said, "I am the way," walked every foot of that route within 18 hours of saying it. Other teachers drew their maps in ink. This one drew his in footprints. And the footprints are red. Set it down. One more statement to go. Because after Thomas's question, the record says something easy to miss. Jesus talks a while longer in that room. And then he says, "Rise, let us go from here." And the rest of what he has to say that night, he says, on the move, out the door, down through the sleeping city, toward the valley and the grove. 11 men following him through the dark toward the worst night of their lives. And somewhere on that walk, with Passover moonlight on the terraced hillsides, he stops. Around them, on those slopes, grow the oldest crop in that country. Rows of gnarled trunks, pruned back hard, black against the sky. Veins, and standing among them, hours before the soldiers come, he gives his men the 7th sentence. The quietest one, the last one, the one about staying. There is a 45-year-old man in this country who built himself, and he will tell you so. And he is not wrong. Nobody handed him anything. He put himself through school on night shifts. He learned every skill that ever paid him, from books and repetition and failure. The house, the business, the reputation, all of it self-assembled. And this country loves him for it. Because self-made is our favorite thing to call a man. And when he became a Christian 11 years ago, he did the most natural thing in the world. He ran his faith on the same operating system, set goals, built habits, read the books, served on the teams, led the group, tracked the streaks. He turned discipleship into a discipline, and it worked. The way it always works for men like him. Output, fruit, or something shaped like it. Everyone at church calls him solid. And this year, quietly, the machine ran dry. He still does everything. That is what nobody sees. The habits are intact. The serving continues. The prayers still leave his mouth on schedule. But somewhere in the last year, the sap stopped, and he has been running on stored sugar. And he knows it at exactly one moment in the week. Sunday, mid-song, hands raised, when he catches himself performing a feeling he cannot find. He is not backsliding. Backsliding, he would know how to fight. This is stranger. He is a green branch in a vase. You have seen what I mean. Cut flowers on a kitchen table. Cut branches in a jar of water. Green for a week. Sometimes 2. Genuinely green. Convincingly green. Photosynthesis still running on residue. Leaves still turning toward the window. The branch does not know it has been cut. It has water. It has light. It has everything except the one thing, connection. And so, it performs life beautifully, while dying on a schedule. There is no dramatic moment of death for a cut branch. There is just a slow arrival of brown. From the edges, inward. This country is full of green branches in vases. Impressive on the outside. Unexplained exhaustion on the inside. Running faith and family and career on stored sugar. And calling the fatigue normal. Hold that man mid-song. Hands up. Tank empty. The last I am was spoken for him. At night, on a road, by a man walking to his death. Set the scene. Because the setting is half the sermon. They have left the upper room. It is close to midnight now. Passover night. Full moon. And Jesus and the 11 are moving through the dark toward the Kidron Valley and the garden beyond it. And on the way, Vin. The slopes around Jerusalem were terraced with them. And this is Passover. Early spring. which means the vines have just been pruned, cut back savagely the way vine dressers do, branches lying in piles, waiting to be burned, the smell of cut wood in the night air, and there is very likely something else in view, or at least in mind, because they have just come from the temple district, and on the front of the temple itself, over the entrance, hung the most famous ornament in the country. The historian Josephus describes it in detail. A colossal vine, wrought in solid gold, with grape clusters, he says, the height of a man. Pilgrims donated gold year after year to add leaves and grapes to it. That golden vine was not decoration. It was the national emblem, stamped on coins of the era, the logo of Israel itself, because the vine was how the nation told its own story. The prophets all used it. Israel was the vineyard of the Lord, dug and planted and walled by God's own hand. But here is the thing about that image, the thing every scholar in the crowd knew and hated knowing. Nearly every time the prophets reached for the vineyard, they reached for it in grief. Isaiah chapter 5 is a love song that goes wrong. My beloved planted a vineyard on a fertile hill, cleared the stones, built the tower, and looked for good grapes, and it yielded wild ones, sour ones, and the song ends with the wall torn down. Jeremiah has God asking, I planted you a choice vine. How did you turn degenerate? The psalmist begs, return. O Lord, look down and see this vine, the one your right hand planted. It is burned and cut down. The vine was the national symbol, and in the scriptures, the vine almost never bears the fruit. The emblem in gold on the temple, and behind it, centuries of harvest failure. Now stand on that midnight road, among the pruned vines, with the golden one glinting somewhere behind you in the moonlight. And hear the seventh sentence. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. The word for true is alethinos, and it means more than genuine as opposed to fake. It means the real one, the fulfillment, the thing the earlier versions were pointing at all along. The way a man might hold a photo of his bride for years at sea, and then step off the ship and hold the bride. The photo was not a lie. It was just never the wife. Israel, the vine, was the photograph. He is claiming to be the bride. Everything the vineyard was ever supposed to produce, and never quite did, grows on me now. And then he turns to the 11, and the sentence turns personal. And this is where it comes for the man in the vase. You are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing. Sit in front of that last clause and do not let it blur. Apart from me you can do. And the Greek word is auden. Nothing, not less, not a reduced harvest. Nothing. And every self-made cell in our bodies files an objection on the spot, because it is obviously false at one level, and he knows it. Apart from him, men build companies and empires and reputations. The world is loud with the achievements of the disconnected, but run the claim through the vineyard and it holds perfectly. A cut branch can be woven into a wreath. It can be carved, displayed, useful in a dozen ways. The one thing it can never do again is the one thing a branch is for: grapes. Apart from the vine, you can produce almost anything except fruit, except the life that was the entire point. There is the diagnosis for the man mid-song with his hands up. His problem was never effort. Nobody in that church out-efforts him. His problem is architecture. He has been trying to be his own root system, generating from willpower what only flows through connection. And willpower is stored sugar. And stored sugar runs out on a schedule. And the schedule arrived this year. He is not failing at faith. He is succeeding at an impossibility, staying green in a vase. And the exhaustion is the tell, which is why the command of this chapter is a word, one word, and it tolls through the passage like a bell. Abide. The Greek is meno, remain, stay, dwell, and John records it 10 times in the first 10 verses of chapter 15. 10 times in 10 sentences. When a speaker on the last night of his life repeats one word 10 times, he is not padding the speech. He is driving a nail where he knows the wind will come. And notice the shock of it. After everything we have walked, line up the verbs of the first 6 statements. The bread said, come. The light said, follow. The door said, enter. The shepherd said, listen to my voice. The resurrection said, believe. The way said, walk with me. 6 commands, and every one of them moves. Motion, all the way down the road. And then the 7th and final statement, the farewell instruction. The last, I am this man, ever gives. And the verb is, do not go anywhere. Stay. The longest journey in the gospel ends with the command to hold still, because abiding was never passivity. It is where the branch spends its strength. A branch does not strain to manufacture grapes. There is no such thing as grape effort. You have never seen a branch sweat. The branch has exactly one job, and the job takes everything. Keep the connection open. Stay where the sap is. The fruit is not the branch's achievement. The fruit is the vine's life, showing up in public. At the far end of a branch that stayed, now, 2 guardrails, built carefully, because this vineyard has ditches on both sides. First, abiding is not a prosperity deal. Read the passage. The connected branch does not get a pass. It gets pruned. Every branch that bears fruit, the Father trims, cuts back. The word John uses is kathairo. He cleans it, so that it will bear more, which means some of the cutting in your life is not punishment and not abandonment. It is the specific attention a vine dresser pays to the branches he expects the most from. Nobody prunes a dead branch. The shears are a compliment. And I know that is a hard sentence. And I am not going to pretend the cutting does not cut. But there is a difference that changes everything between being cut off and being cut back. And only one of those happens to branches the vine dresser has given up on. Second, this is not a war on effort. The man in the vase does not need to try less. He needs to aim the trying somewhere new. All the discipline he spent producing, redirect it to remaining. Guard the connection the way he used to guard the streak. Effort was never the enemy. Self-supply was. So here is what the 7th statement reveals. The last piece before the road turns. The bread said he is the source. And the vine finishes the thought and makes it permanent. He is not a source you visit, a well you walk to with a bucket. He is a source you live attached to, or you do not live. The first statement fed you a meal. The last one grafts you to the kitchen. And with that, the portrait gains its final feature. He is not merely the destination of your road or the payer of your debt. He intends to be the daily sap in your veins, which is the most intimate claim of the seven, and he saved it for last, for the men he loved. On the worst night, among the pruned vines, the demand, then, fire the self-made gardener, change the morning question. The man in the vase has asked one question every day for 11 years. What do I need to produce today? The vine offers him a different one, and it is shorter. Where am I attached today? Ask that one first, every morning, and let production become what it was always supposed to be, a byproduct. And the promise, much fruit. And notice something about fruit that the self-made man will need a minute to absorb. A branch never eats its own grapes. Fruit is the one thing on the vineyard that exists entirely for someone else. For the traveler, the table, the harvest, which means the measure of an abiding life was never what it accumulated. It is what other people got to pick from its branches. The man in the vase has spent years measuring what he holds. The vine measures what he yields. One small detail, the last one, so set it down gently. And then do not move. Because after this, the walking stops. Within hours of this sentence, this man will be arrested among the olive trees at the bottom of this same road. And in the morning, before they lead him out to die, the soldiers of the governor will decide to have some fun with the charge that he is a king. They will need a crown, and the record says they wove one, out of thorns, out of the twisted, flexible branches of a spiny plant, the wild, cursed cousin of the cultivated vine, braided the way you braid vine cuttings. And they pressed it down onto the head of the true vine, and it drew blood. And that circle of twisted branches was the only crown, and the only harvest wreath this world ever gave him. The vineyard of the Lord, handing its vine-dresser's son a crown of what the ground yields when it falls under the curse. Thorns. And somewhere behind that scene, 700 years earlier, Isaiah's love song is still asking its terrible question over the vineyard. What more could I have done for my vineyard that I have not done in it? Set it down, and this time, do not keep walking. Stop here on the road, because we have carried 7 of these small details now, one from every chapter. 7 things set on the table without comment, and you have been patient with me. And the 8th statement I promised you in the first minutes of this story is standing directly ahead of us now, back in the temple courts. On an afternoon when the crowd went looking for stones, it is time to turn around and look at everything at once. Go back to the temple courts. Months before that, last night, on an afternoon when an argument is getting away from everybody. It is still the Feast of Tabernacles, the Festival of Light, the same visit where he stood under the glow of the great lamps and claimed to be the light of the world. The debate has been running all day, and it has been getting hotter by the hour. And now it has arrived at the one name no argument in Israel could avoid forever. Abraham, the founding father, the man God called out of the East 2,000 years before this afternoon. The root of the whole family tree. Every person in this crowd traced their standing with God through that one ancestor. The way old families trace everything to the name on the gate. And Jesus says something that sounds, at first, merely outrageous. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. You can hear the crowd do the math out loud, and the math is fair. You are not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham. 50 was generous. He was in his early 30s. They were rounding up to be safe. and the point still stood. Abraham had been dust for 2 millennia. A carpenter in his 30s was claiming eye contact with him. The crowd is not being stupid here. The crowd is being reasonable. It is the last reasonable moment of the afternoon, because the answer that comes back is the 8th statement. And I want you to hear it exactly, because every word is load-bearing. Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Stop. Do not let your ear smooth that sentence out, because the grammar is broken, and it is broken on purpose. And the break is the message. He did not say, before Abraham was, I was. That would have been astonishing enough. A claim to be older than the patriarch, but it would have kept the rules of time intact. One ancient being outranking another. He reached for a different tense. Past tense for Abraham. Before Abraham was, came into being, entered the story. And then present tense. Eternal present. For himself, I am. Abraham happened. I simply am. It is the difference between a thing that began and a thing that has no beginning to point at. And there is exactly one being in Israel's entire vocabulary who speaks about himself that way. And every soul in that courtyard knew his address. A mountain called Horeb, a bush that burned and did not burn up. Now, line up the 7 statements we have walked, and look at what he just did. Because this is the key turning in the lock. 7 times. Ego, Amy, came out of this man's mouth wearing a predicate. I am the bread. I am the light. I am the door. The shepherd. The resurrection. The way. The vine. 7 times. The fire from the bush walked out in public dressed in a picture, wrapped in something a fisherman could hold. Bread you can tear. Light you can walk by. A door you can lean on. The predicates were mercy. The predicates were smoked glass over the sun, letting a crowd look at something no eye could take straight. And on this afternoon, in the temple courts, with Abraham on the table, he takes the glass off. No bread this time. No door. Novine. No picture. No gift. Nothing for the hands to hold. Just the 2 naked words, unwrapped for the first time, standing in the open air of the temple, exactly the way they stood in the fire of the bush. I am. And the crowd answers the only 2 ways that sentence can ever be answered. John writes it in the very next line. Without even starting a new scene, they picked up stones to throw at him. Understand the stones. This is the part our century gets exactly backward, because we assume they misunderstood him, that this was all a tragic failure of communication, that if he had just explained himself more carefully, the rocks would have gone back on the ground. No. Read the law they were raised on. Leviticus, chapter 24. Whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him. These men were not confused. They were fluent. They had heard a Galilean carpenter, standing in the house of God, take the unspeakable name out of the fire and put it on himself. First person, present tense. The stones were not a failure to understand the claim. The stones were the correct legal response to the claim. If the claim was false. If, that word is the whole afternoon, and it is the whole trial. So, walk with me one last time back to the courtyard where we started, because you can finally hear it now. 3 in the morning, the high priest's house. The witnesses have collapsed. The case is dying. And the high priest stands and puts the prisoner under oath. Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? And the prisoner, silent all night, answers, Ego eimi, I am. And then he adds a line from the prophet Daniel about the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, in case anyone in the room wanted to believe they had misheard. And the high priest tears his robe. That tearing was not theater. It was a legal act with a name, reserved for one occasion. The moment a judge's own ears receive blasphemy. And here is what this whole road lets you see at last. The high priest was not reacting to a strange sentence he had never encountered. Jerusalem had been talking about this man for 3 years. The bread scandal in Capernaum, the light claim at the festival, the shepherd's sermon that ended with stones in men's hands, the Abraham afternoon. The high priest had the full file. And when the 2 words came back one final time, in his own courtyard, under oath, he knew precisely what they were and precisely where they came from. And he did the arithmetic his office required. There was no third option on his desk. Either the name in the bush had just answered him from a prisoner's bloodied face, or this was the highest blasphemy ever spoken on the soil of Israel. He ruled blasphemy. The sentence was death, and they led him out to it. So now, at last, take up the question you have carried since the first minutes of this story. Why did the gentlest sentences this man ever spoke keep ending in walkouts and stones and a torn robe? You already know. Because not one of them was ever merely gentle. Every single I am was a piece of the unspeakable name. Walking around in public wearing a picture. The crowds who left and the men who reached for rocks were not overreacting to a metaphor. They were the only people in the story who heard him correctly and could not bear what they heard. Bread, light, door, shepherd, resurrection, way, vine. Every one of those tender promises had the fire of Horeb inside it the entire time. That is why they could feed you and frighten a courtroom in the same breath. The kindest sentences he ever said were the most dangerous things he ever said, because they were all the same sentence. And a man who talks like that has closed every comfortable exit. Hold the options in your hand. There are only 3, and the crowd in the temple knew all of them. A man who says these things and knows they are false is a deceiver. A man who says them and does not know they are false is out of his mind. And they said exactly that about him. More than once. He has a demon. He is mad. And a man who says them because they are true is not merely a man. What is not on the list, what has never been on the list, is the 4th option our culture invented because it makes no demands. The safe Jesus. The gifted moral teacher who would be horrified to see anyone worship him. That Jesus does not survive contact with the record. Teachers of ethics do not stand in the temple and take the divine name in the first person. The record gives you a man who left you no way to merely admire him. You can call him a liar. You can call him a madman. Or you can call him Lord. And the one thing you cannot honestly call him is just a good man. Because good men do not say, I am, and keep saying it all the way to a cross. Now, turn around. Look back down the whole road, all the way to the lakeside. Because we have been setting small things on the table for an hour. 1 at every stop. 7 details laid down without comment. It is time to pick them all up at once. He said, I am the bread of life. And on his last night, he tore a loaf in his own hands and said, This is my body, given for you. He said, I am the light of the world. And on the afternoon he died. From noon until 3, the sun's strongest hours, darkness covered the land, as if the sky itself confirmed what was going out. He said, "I am the door," and at the moment he died, the temple veil, the most guarded threshold on earth, tore open from the top down, opened from the far side. He said, "I am the good shepherd." The shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, and in the garden, with the torches coming through the trees, he stepped in front of his flock and said, "Let these men go," and not one of them was lost. He said, "I am the resurrection and the life," and on the third morning, the tomb they sealed and guarded was standing open, and it was empty, and it has stayed empty through every argument of 20 centuries. He said, "I am the way," and he walked the way himself, every red footprint of it, from the upper room to the garden to the courtyard to the hill. He said, "I am the true vine," and the only crown this world ever set on his head was braided from thorns, the vineyard's curse, pressed down until it drew blood. 7 statements, 7 payments. Do you see it now? These were never 7 slogans, and they were never even 7 claims exactly. They were 7 checks, written in public over 3 years. Every one of them drawn on the same account. And on a Friday afternoon, on a low hill outside the city wall, every one of them was cashed at once, in the same currency, by the same body. He did not just say the 7 statements, he funded them. The bread was broken, the light went dark, the door was opened by the tearing of him. The shepherd bled for the flock. The resurrection walked out of its own grave. The way was paved with his footprints. The vine was crushed like harvest. And that is why, 2,000 years later, these 7 sentences do not sit quietly in a book of quotations between other wise sayings. Wise sayings cost their speakers nothing. Every one of these cost him everything. And he knew the price while he was saying them. And he said them anyway. In public, on the record, to crowds that kept picking up stones. The man on trial at 3 in the morning was not convicted by false witnesses. The false witnesses failed. He was convicted by his own answer, the same answer he had been giving for 3 years. The answer from the bush, the answer that is still burning. One thing remains. We have walked 7 rooms tonight, and in one of them, there is a name on the door, and the name is yours. Maybe you are the man in the parking garage. The title came through. The congratulations are still lighting up your phone, and the feeling wore off by mid-afternoon. And you are sitting in the dark doing the math you have been avoiding for 15 years. If getting what I wanted did not fix this, what will? Hear the first statement again, spoken directly at your driver's seat. That ache is not a malfunction. It is a compass. And it has been pointing away from that building the whole time. There is bread that does not wear off by 2 in the afternoon. You have been hungry for it since before you knew its name. Maybe you are the woman in the blue glow. 2 in the morning. The brightest bedroom in history. Thumb still moving. You were never short on light. You were short on the kind that knows the way. There is a light that does not need charging, and it does not point away from you like a flashlight. And yes, it will show you the locked room first, and then it will do what the other lights never offered. It will heal what it finds there. Neither do I condemn you. Go. That sentence is still in print. Maybe you are the man in the hallway, 11 tabs open. 34 years old. Every door demanding an audition. No door offering a home. There is one threshold in existence where the toll was paid by the door itself. It is narrow about the entrance and wide open about you. Whoever, it says, that word has never once had fine print under it. Maybe you are being shepherded tonight by something that knows everything about you and has never known you. Run the audit. What does it gain from me? And what would it lose for me? You are allowed to fire a hired hand. Somewhere a shepherd with scars in his hands is calling your actual name, and his voice does not sound like a notification. Maybe you are in day 4, past the deadline, past the casseroles, arranging your life around a sealed stone. And you carry the sentence, if you had been here, hear this and hold it. Day 4 is the day he specializes in. He is not afraid of the odor of the things you buried. And he has a habit of showing up after everyone agrees it is too late, and calling things by name that everyone else has stopped naming. And when you cry at that grave, remember, so did he. Knowing the ending, he still wept. Your tears are in good company. Maybe you are at the kitchen table with 10 hand-drawn maps, terrified of choosing wrong, exhausted from being your own cartographer. Change the question tonight. Not which road, whose hand. You were never meant to navigate your way to God. You were meant to be brought. The escort has already been arranged, and he has walked the route personally, all the way through and back. Maybe you are the branch in the vase, still green, still performing, still admired, and running on stored sugar, and so tired that the tiredness has started to frighten you. Nobody is asking you to be greener. You are being invited to be planted. One word, 10 teams, on the last night of his life, because he knew the wind was coming for people exactly like you. Abide. Stay where the sap is. Let the fruit become someone else's job. So here is what to do with this road. Now that you have walked it once, do not try to swallow it whole. Take it the way it was given. One statement at a time. 7 sentences. 7 weeks. 1 sentence each week. Read every morning. A few seconds. And then let it work on you for 7 days. Week 1. Let the bread ask what you have been eating instead. Week 2. Let the light ask about the locked room. Let the door ask where you are still auditioning. The shepherd ask, who is leading you? The resurrection, ask what you have sealed. The way, ask whose hand you are holding. And the vine, ask. Every morning. The only question that outranks the to-do list. Where am I attached today? Nobody is promising you an easier life in 7 weeks. He never once promised easy. But 7 weeks from tonight, you will know whether these were 7 quotations you admired, or one person you have finally met. Because that was always the choice. And it is the last thing this road has to say. 1400 years before the trial, a fugitive shepherd asked a burning bush for a name, and the fire answered with a sentence that refused to finish. I am. A signed check with the amount left blank, and a nation carried it for 14 centuries. Unspoken. Waiting. Then a carpenter filled in the blank. 7 times. I am the bread, the light, the door, the shepherd, the resurrection, the way, the vine, and the 8th time. In the temple courts, he stopped filling in blanks and simply read the name off the fire. And the world answered him with stones, and then with wood and nails, and they hung him up outside the city and watched the light go out at noon. And they were certain, absolutely certain, that they had finally put the fire out. But that was always the strange thing about this particular bush. It was the first thing Moses noticed. The reason he crossed the ground to look, it burned, and it was not consumed. 2,000 years now. The empire that ran the trial is a museum. The court that tore its robes is dust. Every power that ever tried to close the case is a chapter in a history book. And the two words are still burning. On every continent. In every language. In this one. Tonight. In whatever room you are sitting in. And they are not asking what you think of an ancient teacher. They never were. They are asking the question he asked a grieving woman on the road outside Bethany. The only question on this whole road that was aimed past the crowd. At one person at a time. He said, "I am the resurrection and the life." And then he looked at her. The way this whole story has been looking at you for the last hour. And said, "Do you believe this?"